All right, everyone. Welcome to State of the Chiefs. It's where I go over the Chiefs 90-man roster. We'll take a look at the roster makeup, position by position, what we have for cap room, which is in great shape. Spoiler alert. And then we'll take a look at how many we have on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. And then we'll take a look at the position groups where I feel like there's a higher chance that we're going to be drafting. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoy. So I'm going to be rolling through these pretty quickly here. Obviously, we're set at quarterback. With bringing in Wentz, we're good. I actually feel better than I've felt, and obviously since at least Henne's been gone, and honestly, Wentz could arguably be a bigger upgrade over Henne. Then obviously kicker, we're good. I think we'll be fine with Matt Araiza at punter. And then, thank God, we got James Winchester back. So those are all greened out. We're not going to be taking a look at those. I'm actually not going to spend much time on safeties either, but I don't think we'll be drafting there, but we can look at what we have in the room. So you can kind of just get an idea of how many people we have on the current 90-man roster, how many people did we originally keep on the 53 in last year, which is not a sign of how much we'll keep this year, especially with the kickoff rule changes. And then how many people I see as roster locks right now. So we will go through those here shortly, but let's talk about cap. So according to Over the Cap, we actually have 20,100,000 and some change. So that's a really good place to be, especially before you bring in all your draft picks. Rookies, I'm putting 8 million out there. It should probably be a little bit less than that, especially with as late as we pick in the rounds. But it's just more to give a little bit of a buffer. I think probably there's a chance we could have about 10 million really left at the end of when all things are said and done. With the 53-man cut, currently what they show as our cap space just shows what it is with the top 51, not the 53. So you'll have to add in a couple of those probably $980,000 contracts. So roughly that's about $2 million. Then you got some dead cap because players you're probably going to cut. So that's kind of more just a high-level view of where I see us being. And then on the right of that, you can see how many draft picks I think we could potentially be looking at across the different positions. You'll note that safety's not on there. Doesn't mean we can't draft one. It's actually a pretty deep safety class, but I just don't see it as a real need, and I'll talk about that why. So I'm not going to spend a whole long time on each of these pages for offense and defense. This shows you that we have 36 players on offense. You'll see we have 35 on defense, and then 3 special teams players. The players highlighted in green are the players that I think are pretty much locked into their roster spot. Again, I'm not going to touch on Rashee Rice's situation. I think we're not cutting him. We'll have no savings from that. He seems to be cooperating, and we'll just let that one play out. But yeah, that's an idea of who all we have. It's just split into 2 different groups for the ease of being able to read it on this slide. So the same general gist applies here on this slide. A lot more players are locked in on the defense than we have on the offense, and that's primarily up to the wide receiver core and some offensive line needs. The few that I have marked in yellow, that's Matt Dickerson and B.J. Thompson. They were 53-man roster at the beginning of last season. Matt Dickerson was dropped to practice squad a few other times. B.J. Thompson's interesting. I think he could be a little bit at risk. He's a Joe Cullen guy. A little different build than our other defensive ends, but there's just not a lot of room to get him reps, to get him practice, so who knows? He could be at risk of us drafting another edge or just straight defensive end prospect to fill that role, so we will see. So for the running back room, I think it's pretty clear cut. I mean, we brought Clyde Edwards-Helaire in on a 1-year deal. It's mostly going to be dead cap after June 1st, so he's going to make the roster. Isaiah Pacheco's our lead back. We got a little bit of a sneak peek of Michael Pirine, but I don't think he'll make it. Keontae Ingram's a little interesting. Luis Rees-Summit is probably the most interesting on this list, but I don't know that we would really count him as a running back. I think we'll be looking at drafting a running back in this draft. I think this is a pretty underwhelming running back list. All right, so wide receiver room, it's a bit ugly. There's 11 or 12 guys here on the list, most of which will not make the 53-man. The most interesting ones people are curious about will be Kadarius Toney. He's a full dead cap cut, so it's going to come down to attitude and health for him. Sky Moore at really underperformed last year, and I think if we're seeing much of the same thing this training camp and preseason, then he could be a cap casualty too because there's some savings associated with him. An interesting one to look at is Justin Watson. He's very beloved here in Kansas City. He has the trust of Patrick, but his contract does allow for quite a bit of savings. And if we do draft a couple wide receivers, he could be a bit at risk. Below there, from Montreal, Washington to Jacob Copeland. Justin Ross had his hype last year, but never really lived up to expectations. Anthony Miller hasn't had a good year in 3 years. Nico Remigio is the only one that really strikes me as someone who could potentially catch fire and maybe have a shot at the 53 man, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, so we go from the excess of the wide receiver room to the lacking of the offensive line. So pretty much everybody's considered a lock right now, in my opinion. The only questionable one on there would be Lucas Niang. He's had some trouble staying on the field. So if we were able to, bring in 2-3 prospects from the draft, then he could be in a little bit of danger. I think Godrick's probably he's gonna be cut. I'm not an expert on the international pathway, but I think that you can only keep one on there. So I think there's a good chance that Luis Rees-Zammit will take that spot. But I do like the idea of us signing at least one tackle, one guard, and if there's another lineman that we really like in the draft, take him. We could use some depth in this room. Not too much to cover on the tight end room. We're pretty set. Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, Irv Smith Jr. The one thing of note, Kelce's the only one on contract for more than 1 year. Everybody questions whether he's going to retire. Personally, I don't see it. But if he were to just up and decide after this year he's going to retire, we have potentially 0 tight ends on the roster. So it wouldn't totally surprise me if there's somebody they really are interested in bringing in someone to be a potential long-term successor for Travis Kelce in the draft. Defensive end is a little bit tricky because you got Charles Omenihu, who's a lock, but really he's not going to count towards the 53 man because he won't be ready at that time. The rules did change this offseason as far as players being able to be added to IR and be able to be brought back off of IR after the season started. So I'm not an expert in that. I'm not going to touch on it too much, but there will be an extra roster spot there for it. We kept 5 defensive ends last year. So with 4 locked in, really you got 4. If you kept B.J. Thompson in there, who's to say Neil Farrell actually has a bigger cap hit if you cut him. I'm not sure if these guys are, if we trust, we want to give BJ another year of trying. We obviously traded for Neil Farrell for a 6th-round pick, and then Malik Herring's actually done pretty good work for us. So I don't know if I see us drafting someone here. Defensive tackle and defensive end are going to be interesting. All right, so defensive tackle, a position we basically had nobody left under contract to start the year. And now we have Chris Jones, Derek Nottie, Turk Wharton all locked in. They're going to be there. So there's only 2 positions left. Matt Dickerson was on that, the 53 man, but he also got put back on practice squad, I think 3 times last year. So Isaiah Buggs, he's a full dead cap hit if we cut him. Mike Pennell, I'm sure there's probably a handshake agreement there that they had him on the roster. Don't go somewhere else. We'll keep you around till come playoff time. Just rest your body. We'll see. But there could be potential we would draft someone there, get a better long-term depth because those are mostly 1-year contracts, but who knows. So as I've stated previously, Nick Bolton's on the last year of his deal. I think Spags loves him, but there's a lot of things at play there. Drew Tranquill and Leo Chenal got 3 and 2 years left respectively. It's the bottom 3 are reasonable, but I don't know that they move the needle a whole lot. We had some injuries last year at this position, and Jack Cochran was able to come in and play nicely against the Packers, but I'd like a little bit more talent in the room if I could. Wouldn't be surprised if I saw us draft someone, although this isn't a great linebacker draft. Obviously, losing Snead, it hurts, but I think obviously we're happy to have Trent McDuffie. Joshua Williams was improving last year. Jalen Watson had a little bit of a down year, but was great the year before. Nick Jones, I think, is somebody we're high on. We just need to see more of him on the field. Nazeeh Johnson coming back, I think, is going to be great. I don't want to take any away from these other players. Kelvin Joseph, he's a high potential guy. Just who knows if we can get that potential out of him. And so There is a lot of talk about us drafting another cornerback. We will wait and see, but we're pretty set at cornerback, in my opinion. We'll just have to wait and see what the draft does. But one thing we all know is that if we draft one, Merritt is going to coach him up, and Spags can get him ready. So we'll wait and see. My final group, I think we're pretty deep here. I don't think we need to draft anybody. There's a lot of talent in the draft at safety, especially late in the draft. So we may end up going for someone more long term. I think Justin Reed may be on the last year of his contract. I'm not sure on that so don't quote me. But Brian Cook will be back. Chamari Connor he was really ascending last year, and he's someone I really, really like. And then Deion Bush is also on the squad. We re-signed Tyree Gillespie multiple times. And then you also have to throw in, the fact that Najee Johnson can also go back and play safety. So I'm not sure we draft one. It just doesn't make sense to me. Veach did mention something to that effect, though, on his latest press conference. So who knows? Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you found it informative. That should hopefully give you a good idea where our 90-man roster is at currently, right prior to the draft. If there's any other topics you think I should be speaking to on these, I'd appreciate any feedback you guys got. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to giving another one after the draft is done with and we bring in the free agents. Thanks, everyone.